Ladies and gentlemen, the long grind of the 82-game regular season is officially in the books, and the NBA playoffs have arrived. First, we got to get through the play-in tournament and officially decide all these seedings. But myself, Sean Barnard, and Sam Oshtry of The Score are here to break down exactly how the table is set for this awesome playoffs incoming. Before we dive fully into it, Sam, how we doing, my man?
I'm great. No complaints at all. It's the best time of year, the best 2 months of the year coming up. So let's get into it.
We've made it, my man. We got through the load
Better than
management.
March Madness. After a lousy March Madness, even though it's pretty good Final Four, like these are the best 2 months of the year. I don't want to hear any college basketball purist out there. These are the best 2 months.
Yeah, and a lot of chalk in March Madness. We will see if we get that in the NBA here. But before we dive into the full playoff slate, still want to start with kind of just putting a bow on the regular season here. So obviously, the NBA really went for this crescendo of an end of a regular season. They wanted all 30 teams to play both on Friday and Sunday. On Sunday, jamming them all between tip-offs between 1 o'clock and 3:30 there. It was a lot going on in the NBA world. So what were your thoughts on that exact kind of setup there and the takeaways now that it did go down?
It was classic NBA to just botch the scheduling where you play Friday, a bunch of key games on Friday, and then no games on Saturday. Like none, not a single game on Saturday. Nike Hoop Summit at night. I guess people wanted everyone to watch that. And then you have all 30 teams playing Sunday. Not only were all 30 teams playing Sunday, but you're going head to head with the Masters. And it happened to be one of the more interesting Masters rounds ever. So it was really bad scheduling. And the most important game of the day that was going to decide a playoff matchup was Clippers Warriors. And that was started at 3:30, literally head to head with Rory's finish. So I was like, everyone in all these group chats were blowing up about Rory, like, oh my God, like holy moly, like look at all this. And I'm just like, yeah, I know, right? Like the Warriors Clippers going to OT to make overtime or to make the playoffs. So it's like it was classic NBA, just botch the scheduling. You can't have it go head to head with the Masters, especially on Sunday at the Masters. But look, it was a good day, and it's cool that the play-in tournament has created this interesting final couple weeks of the season where every game is so important. And the Warriors essentially missed the playoffs, have the chance to miss the playoffs and being in the play-in by losing to the Spurs with that Harrison Barnes buzzer beater a few games ago. So it's like every game these last couple weeks of the season was so important, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, 100% there. And I honestly, I still don't love the way it entirely played out just because you miss a lot of action when there's that many games taking place at the same time. And ultimately, there was not a ton of games that mattered. The Eastern Conference was fully decided. It was down to the West, but it was a close race. And I do think it is cool that that final game between the Clippers and Warriors did push to overtime and some pretty fateful, just really interesting stuff down the stretch there. We got a Draymond just missed shot that can't happen, a play design for Buddy Hield that just absolutely bricked on a three there. So some interesting stuff from both teams there, but really changed the outlook of these playoffs. That if the Warriors had come out and won that, we'd be talking about a first round series between the Lakers and Warriors. Instead, it was, go ahead.
I was going to say, here's my thing, is that I wonder how you feel about this. The 7th seed is honestly the better path for not just the Warriors, but for any team that was going to get this. Because assuming you win the plan, that's the difficult part about getting the 7th seed, is you have a win and in game to get that actual seed. And there's a chance you could still make the playoffs or be the 8th seed, which you don't want to play the Thunder in the first round. But when you're if the Warriors get the 7th seed here, they'll play the Rockets, who are the least experienced team in the entire Western Conference playoffs, in the first round. And then if they escape them, they'd avoid the Thunder in the second round as you pull up the playoff bracket here. So that's the best possible path for the 7th seed. So in a weird way, it's like the Warriors still have to go out and handle business tomorrow night against the struggling Grizzlies. But if the Warriors can get that 7th seed, that's a better path than being the 6th seed and playing the Lakers in the first round, which if they had won the game yesterday, that's what they would have faced.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about that. And I was even sitting there thinking, if I'm one of these teams right now, and I do think it was much more advantageous for the Warriors overall, maybe it is the best direction to let that game slip. But the risk that you do run there is anything can happen in a one-and-done setting, as we were about to discuss with the play-in tournament. And if you do end up having to go against Oklahoma City Thunder in the opening round, not a recipe I don't think either one of these teams want. But let's stick with the Warriors, since that was where the play-in tournament will be the second game of tonight's action, facing off against the Memphis Grizzlies. And to put the odds on the table here, the Warriors are 7-point favorites, minus 305 on DraftKings Sportsbook there. These are two teams that have had their outlook pretty shaken up to a pretty significant extent down the home stretch of the season. For the Warriors directly, the addition of Jimmy Butler has changed their outlook entirely. They are 23-7 with him in the lineup. And for the Memphis Grizzlies, making the coaching change with 9 games remaining in the regular season there. So what's your initial feel on this specific game, Sam? How we feeling?
I think the Warriors win big. And a lot of people are concerned about the Warriors right now because of how they finished that game. Number one, Steph is there's times where he doesn't look 100%. We saw Jimmy Butler banged up late in that game when he banged knees with Kawhi Leonard on a drive. It was great verticality, honestly, and a great contest by Jimmy Butler, but he bangs knees with Kawhi Leonard, and he's banged up down in the final minute of that game yesterday. So now they've 1 day rest. They're going to be at home, but they're going into this game a little banged up where they needed the rest because every game had been so important for them. So they'd played their starters all these minutes. I just think I'm not a fan of this Grizzlies team at all. I'm not a fan of the coaching change. John Morant is having one of the worst seasons when you take the entirety of the year, not including last year for John Morant because he was suspended, then injured. This is probably one of the worst seasons of his career. His drives are down, and when your drives are down, you're not getting to the rim as much. That's fine if you're a great three-point shooter. Like Anthony Edwards is shooting way more threes and not driving as much, but he's drilling his threes, and his field goal attempts and three-point attempps are up because of that. Exactly. Yeah. With John Morant, he's not a great three-point shooter at all. So if you're not a three-point threat and you're also not driving to the rim, it's like, what are you? And they don't run really any pick and roll like that. That's the one thing about them is their offense. They don't really rely on pick and roll. They run it sometimes, but not to the extent that a lot of other teams do. So you're relying on him and Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson Jr. has had a great year, but he's not a great rebounder. And their small Warriors lineup with Draymond Green at the 5. I just don't see how the Grizzlies are going to guard that. I think the Warriors win big.
I like it. And I do feel pretty similarly there. I think that and by the way, I do want to give Mark Henry Jr. a little shout out in the comments here saying, what is the LeBron hate club Lakers?
We'll get to that.
Yeah. And I don't think we've seen anything anti-LeBron yet at this point. So stay tuned if we're getting there. I'm just playing. I do like this Lakers team, but to keep it on the tracks and stick with this Warriors team directly here, I feel very similarly about you with John Morant. I do think he's a flawed basketball player, and this Grizzlies team as a whole, it's still fascinating to me. They made the decision to fire Taylor Jenkins with 9 games remaining. And sort of the spin zone that seems to be coming out now is they didn't want him to have a chance to save his job. That if this team had overperformed in the playoffs, it looks bad when you fire him to this point. I think that's kind of a broken thought process on a lot of levels there. But the bottom line is this is the situation. The team has to go in. And now with saying this all about John Morant, to give the dude his flowers a little bit, amid the grenade celebrations, all the other antics that are going on, the dude has balled to end the season. That's a list off his scoring outputs the final 5 games of the season. 36 points against the Warriors on 5 of 8 3-point shooting, had 30 points the next game, 28 points, 36 points, 21 points. He's shooting 41% from 3 over his final 15 games of the season. He has increased his overall in the season above 30% from beyond the arc here. So a strong ending by Ja. With all that being said here, I don't think that he has enough in himself or around him to take down this Warriors team. Now, the point about injuries, I think, is interesting here. The Warriors have done everything possible to sort of downplay this little hand or thumb injury that Steph Curry's dealing with. It's on his shooting thumb, man. Like, there's no way around that being bothersome to an extent. And even though they're kind of talking about how it is, like, been bothering him all year, that he's just dealt with this, it is pretty clear to me that in recent games, he's at least holding it more, dealing with it more. It seems to be a bigger deal at the worst time. So what do you think is exactly going on with Steph Curry, and how much of a concern do you think that is, Sam?
Yeah, it's hard to know because, like, there's certain games where he played the Rockets a couple games ago and he scores 3 points and he's 1 for 10. And he kind of got discouraged in the sense that he stopped shooting threes at a high rate. And it was like, all right, something's probably bothering him. But then he plays the Clippers yesterday and he scores 36 points. And I believe he was 7 for 12 from 3. And you're like, all right, there's nothing wrong with Curry. So I think there's something there. I don't think it's a legitimate excuse as he enters the playoffs because we've seen him have great shooting nights and have great outputs. But he also had 2 really crucial late turnovers against the Clippers yesterday. But that's also been the knock on Curry, the only knock on Curry his entire career is that he's often lazy and just lackadaisical with the ball, and he's more prone to turnovers. So I'm not really concerned about the Curry injury. I don't think it'll affect him tomorrow night. I don't think it'll affect the Warriors playoff run. The Jimmy thing, I think Jimmy will be fine too, because it really was just he banged knees. It wasn't like some non-contact knee injury. He really just banged knees. The interesting thing for me with this Warriors team in this lineup is that Jonathan Kuminga was benched yesterday, completely benched out of the rotation. And Steve Kerr had been hinting at it for a while because he had said we can't have that much non-shooting on the floor together, which would be Draymond, Jimmy, and Jonathan Kuminga. all guys who just aren't threats from three. And as good as Steph is, that puts him in a really uncomfortable position when he's the guy that's going to be blitzed right when he crosses half court and they have no other shooting on the floor. So that's really uncomfortable for the Warriors to be out there. And Jonathan Kuminga didn't play a minute. Like, this guy didn't play a minute. He's been in trade talks for a while. You could have traded him at the deadline.
He'll be a free agent.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was the whole reasoning for trading him at the deadline. Right. It's because if he's not part of your long-term future, then get rid of him and get something of value back. And now you're sitting him in essentially what was a playoff game. And who knows what his role will be in the playoffs moving forward, because you really can't have that much non-shooting on the floor. I don't think he deserves to play not like 0 minutes at all. You can find a role with him where he shares the floor with Draymond when Jimmy's on the bench at times, like maybe 10 to 15 minutes. But that was really interesting to me that they said we can't have this much non-shooting on the floor. And Moses Moody got way more minutes because of it, but it's not like he's some great three-point shooter either. So it was interesting that Jonathan Kuminga was completely benched, and that's something I'm watching tomorrow and moving forward.
Yeah, and my prediction is that continues. That I think that's probably a decision Steve Kerr has decided in his head that is the best direction for this team moving forward. I've never got the sense that Steve Kerr is the biggest Jonathan Kuminga guy, nor am I.
You think?
Yeah, and even like to use Moody as sort of the example here. For starters, I thought Moody played relatively well yesterday, and you just kind of know what you're getting a little bit more. Like, Kuminga's a wild card, man, and there's times where that works to your benefit, where he's creating off the dribble, making some things happen, and there's also times where that works to your detriment, where it's just a wild card. You don't know what you're getting out there, and it doesn't always look pretty. So I don't think that sits great with Steve Kerr, and it will be interesting to watch. That's a great storyline to point out. My final prediction for this matchup, I'm with you. I think the Warriors roll relatively easy, and I think this is going to be a situation where the experience really shows. I think Jimmy Butler is going to show his worth for this Golden State Warriors team. It is going to get nasty. There's going to be some, playoff-like atmosphere there, but I think the Warriors cover the -7, and they end up taking care of business pretty easily. You're on the same page with all that?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It does worry me because it was a couple years ago when the Warriors were in the play, and I believe they had the 8th seed, and they lost that game
to the Kings, right?
Yeah, and then they lost the next game too, and they were out of the playoffs.
Yeah, you're right.
The last game was against the Kings. But they were the 8th seed. They had 2 chances to make the playoffs, and they lost both those games and were out of the playoffs. So it's like the experience factor should help for a team that has that much championship DNA in them, but they've also been in this play-in situation before. And have dropped out of the playoffs completely. I don't think that's going to happen this year because I think they're way better than the Grizzlies.
Yeah.
And I think this team is way better since Jimmy Butler. I mean, I don't have the exact record in front of me, but I believe it's something like 23-6 or
23-7.
23-7 since Jimmy came in. Like, they've been one of the better teams in the NBA since they traded for Jimmy. So I think they take care of business tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's move things earlier on in the night in the Eastern Conference here between the Atlanta Hawks and Orlando Magic, a game that I think there's a little bit more wide-ranging opinions, although I know you and I are aligned here. The Magic are 5-point favorites, -205 on the money line on DraftKings Sportsbook. The Atlanta Hawks are plus 170 odds pulling the upset with the game total set at 217 here. Interesting clash of styles, and you might as well name the play-in tournament the Atlanta Hawks Invitational at this point. Maybe the DeMar DeRozan Invitational could work as well. But Hawks versus Magic, where's your head at, Sam Oshtry?
Yeah, my head is leaning with the Hawks. And there's a bunch of teams that are just in the play-in, perpetual play-in teams.
Yeah.
Every single year, you can just count on them to be in the play-in. And that really speaks to the franchise accepting and ownership really accepting mediocrity. Because, like, I guess it's something to be optimistic about if you're a fan. But at some point, it's like, all right, the Bulls, and they started signaling this year, and they will moving forward. But, like, at some point, you just can't be in the play-in every single year. You got to either somehow get to the top of the standings or start tanking to give yourself some better draft picks. But back to this game. I'm with the Hawks on this. And it's more just that this Magic offense is really disappointing. Brutal. I expected, and I saw you tweeted this too, but they're having one of the worst 3-point shooting seasons in the last decade.
Yep.
It's been that bad for them. And I expected guys like Jalen Suggs and Franz Wagner, after he had a horrible shooting season last year, and he started this year shooting pretty good from 3. He was like around 35-37% through the first month and a half of the year. And it's just his numbers have completely tanked between him and Paolo, and they're too similar positionally. And when neither guy can shoot, it's a pretty easy offense to stop. And that's the only thing. It's like the Hawks defense is not good at all. They're in the bottom half of the league. Even Dyson Daniels is obviously a great defender, and he's the steals leader and in contention for Defensive Player of the Year. But beyond him, that they're one of the worst. They've been a really bad defense. But when you're going against a Magic team that are phenomenal offense, or excuse me, a really poor offense, I'm going to trust the Hawks defense and their offensive firepower more than I would the Magic. So I think the Hawks can cover and somehow win. And there's also the other factor where you would rather be the 8th seed. I'm not saying this is going to play into this matchup. And people, I remember last year, it was the Pelicans-Lakers game in that 7-8, and people were discussing the similar thing. I would rather be the 8th seed than the 7th seed because I'd much rather play the Cavs than the Celtics in the first round, especially, if you're the Hawks, you've gotten kind of killed but by the Celtics a couple of years in a row now in the playoffs, and it's just unfortunate you keep running into them, but that's where you've landed in the standings. I'd rather be the 8th seed. I'm not saying that's going to play a factor, but it's definitely in my mind, and it has to be in the coaching staff's mind to some degree.
I think you're right about the overall point there, but I also think there needs to be a little bit of, self-analysis here, where if you're the Atlanta Hawks, the Miami Heat, any of these teams in the play, and you look yourself in the mirror and say, can we really go eye for eye with either one of these teams?
Here's the thing. The Magic went 7 games with the Cavs last year. They can, I don't think they would beat the Cavs. The Cavs are way better this year than they were last year. They could somehow convince themselves that they could beat the Cavs in a series if they get that 8 seed.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and it is fascinating, like the stark differences that these two franchises have gone since that series. The Cavs obviously going to heights that I don't think any of us predicted, being the clear-cut #1 seed in the East. And then there's the Magic, who, by the way, started the season 15-7 and looked like they were on the track and on the right track there. What's most frustrating to me about this, you're absolutely right about the shooting. Their offense is unwatchable for stretches. And what's most frustrating about that to me is they knew this was an issue. They were 24th in the league in three-point percentage last year, and they went out and gave $66 million to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, saying this will fix it. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope has shot 34.6% from three, his worst since 2015-16. And you acknowledge the team stats. Collectively, the Orlando Magic are shooting 31.7% from beyond, or 31.8% from beyond the three-point arc. That is the lowest, not just in the NBA this year, but the last team to shoot close to that was the Los Angeles Lakers in 2015-16. This has been the worst three-point shooting team in a decade here, and you're just not going to win a lot of games in this current ecosystem of basketball when that is the case here. I like the Hawks to win outright. I like the plus 170, and I do think that there have to be some pretty hard conversations about this Orlando Magic team and how you build out from here, because in the same way we had these conversations about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who, by the way, are each notably better players than the two guys we're talking about down in Orlando, I do think there's too many overlapping strengths and weaknesses, and that they are going to have to make some changes down the line. Your thoughts there?
It is always interesting because you have to factor in injuries into the equation. And like, obviously the Sixers are going through this now where it's like when you're really building out your future prospects and how you want to build this team moving forward, you have to factor in injuries. Like, obviously Jalen Suggs wasn't part of the solution when it came to 3-point shooting, but he missed a lot of time and is now obviously out for the year. Paolo Banchero had an early season injury, and then Franz got injured, and like injuries just kept coming when they couldn't build roster continuity. But I'm with you where it's like you need to go out and get more shooting, and they tried that. Like, KCP was the shooter that they got that was supposed to help them. And if you remember last offseason, the discussion was really who was the best free agent signing between Paul George and KCP. And honestly, like who was worse? Because they're both just disastrous. But who was the worst free agent signing between those two? Who were just they were the hottest guys on the market. Like, everyone wanted them. They were going to get a lot of money. And both have just been so disappointing. It's pretty funny how that works when you like have such high expectations for a free agent, and then they're just horrible.
Yeah, no, it is fascinating, and I don't think either of those franchises are running the same victory lap that they were at the time for those signings there. But we'll keep it rolling to the next.
We're gonna have to reevaluate like how we talk about best offseason moving forward. Like,
we need to pause the offseason grades. I think like moving forward, like let's get
whoever trades for Kevin Durant, they're gonna be the best offseason. At best, they're gonna have won the offseason, and then obviously we'll see if that works out, but it probably won't.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about that. Now, we'll move on to the next day here, looking at Wednesday's slate, and we'll stick in the Eastern Conference for two more perennial playing teams as the Miami Heat and Chicago Bulls face off. Sam Oshtry, what are you thinking about this matchup here?
Yeah, I like the Heat just because I trust Erik Spoelstra more. But they've been another team that's, and I don't want to go too long on this, but they've been another team that's been really disappointing. And you kind of think about what their long-term future holds, and there's not a lot of optimism there. Like obviously Bam started out the year not great, has been much better in the last couple months of the season than he was the first half of the season. Tyler Herro had the best year of his career, but not a lot of help. Not a lot of development from, I mean, Khalil Ware is good, but he had a good year, but not a lot of development from a lot of their younger players that you kind of expected to take a jump this year. So that's been pretty disappointing. But for this game, I like the Heat. I think the Heat cover just because it's Eric Spoelstra in one game situation. The coaching edge is there.
We're going head to head on this one. That I'm in agreement that I trust Eric Spoelstra. I'm not in agreement that I trust just about anyone on this Heat roster here. And like for this Bulls team specifically, they're not a team that I think has any chance to make some sort of play-in noise. But I've been more, I guess, motivated by the way that they've played it in recent weeks than I can feel in several years to this point. That I do think Josh Giddey has teased being a potential, like, I don't want to say foundational piece because that's a little bit strong, but a guy that you can look forward to moving forward, putting up triple doubles on a regular basis, hauling in 10 plus rebounds, being so creative in the way that he does make passes for others and generate looks within this offense. I've been impressed with Giddey running the show. Kobe White is a guy that I think I've again has taken a huge leap this season, and they have their flaws defensively. Vucevic leaves a ton to be desired on the inside. They're not a perfect team by any means, but I kind of just think this is a lost year for the Miami Heat. They haven't really had an opportunity to build collectively the way they hoped. The Jimmy Butler trade stuff hung over this franchise for just about the entirety of the season, and I haven't seen any sort of sample size that has me convinced that this team can play cohesive winning basketball. We've seen them flip the switch when they get in the play-in tournament before. I don't think the same kind of Heat culture applies without Jimmy Butler here this season.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Duncan Robinson has been pretty disappointing. I mean, look up and down the roster, and it's disappointment after disappointment after disappointment. I don't even know if this Heat team would even want to be in the playoffs at this point. There probably is some value in getting on with the offseason and getting on with obviously you start the draft preparation process already, but just gearing all your resources towards that and free agency and how you're going to move towards the future rather than even having the chance to make a playoff series and just get swept in the first round. So I don't know if you're going to see that motivation from the Heat. I just think they're the better team with the better coach. And when it's a pick 'em. It's +1, literally a pick 'em, I guess. I'll roll with the Heat.
Yeah, definitely a coin flip game here. I do lean Chicago just from a little bit of a talent advantage, but do hear your point about Spoelstra, and will be interesting to see. From one disappointment to another, we will head to the Western Conference, where the Dallas Mavericks will be hosting the Sacramento Kings in the second matchup of the night. Or I apologize, Sacramento Kings hosting the Dallas Mavericks here. So the Kings are 5-point favorites, -198 on the money line. Obviously, it's been a hectic year for the Mavericks here. I'm not even sure what their fan base is rooting for at this point, but how do you see this game going, Sam?
I'll tell you what they're rooting for. They're rooting to lose this game and just get on with this team, this franchise, this ownership group, their GM, all of it. Good riddance. And this is a give-up game to me. It's not really just the fan base. It's honestly these players are probably so sick of the fatigue of having to answer all these questions about stuff they have literally nothing to do with. Someone said at one point, I forget who it was on the Mavs, but someone was like, guys, can you stop yelling fire Nico? Like, we had nothing to do with this. We're the players. You're yelling it at us. You're impacting us. You're rooting against your own home team. And it's just, obviously, I know this game is in Sacramento, but it's really just a give-up game for the Mavs. Like, I'm sure Jason Kidd has been exhausted all year. He probably doesn't even want to advance further, making it into the playoffs. You're not playing for anything. Anthony Davis is the best player in this game, no doubt. I just don't see the Mavs giving that much effort that would require to win on the road in this game. So I'll take the Kings with the points.
All right, well, we're going head to head on this one as well, as I do think the Dallas Mavericks win outright with the +164 here. Anthony Davis is going to be the best player on that floor by a pretty comfortable margin. I also think this Kings team is pretty flawed. They don't have a lot defensively whatsoever. It's interesting, like the talent is clearly there, but it's a bunch of like recycled guys that we kind of know don't work together, that we've seen Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan not capable of playing together and elevating a team. Domantas Sabonis, we've seen his flaws. And by the way, I think Anthony Davis is going to eat him up on the boards. I know he led the league in rebounding. He's a talented player, Sabonis, but he's got a lot of flaws as well. I think it kind of helps this Mavericks team that this is a road game and that they are not playing in front of the Dallas home crowd there. I also kind of think like with Anthony Davis specifically, there is a little bit of a chip on his shoulder of like, don't forget about me. I think that matters in this game. I think he's going to carry this team to a win. I don't think this is going to change how we remember the trade or the outlook for this Mavericks organization whatsoever, but I do think they have a little bit of positivity to build off that they do take down this Kings team.
The only thing I'll say is I'm so down on the Grizzlies right now. I know Ja's been playing much better, but I'm so down on the Grizzlies right now. I could see the winner of this 9-10 game beating the Grizzlies in the second play and sneaking into the 8th spot. So it'll be an interesting game.
Yeah, and that is actually my prediction as well, as I think that will shake out. So
Mavs sneaking into the playoffs.
I have the Mavs sneaking
Their
into
fan
the
base is
playoffs.
going to be pissed about that.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting there. But I do have sympathy for Anthony Davis specifically here for the same reason of he did nothing to cause this, man. He just was traded, was a part of the deal, and basically is walking into a fan base hated for none of his own doing there. So I have a lot of sympathy with that. And I do think I'm not brushing over. He's not Luka Doncic whatsoever, but Anthony Davis is a damn good basketball player.
Yeah, for sure. And I do respect the fact that he even came back. I mean, after that injury, 95% of guys would just be like, all right, I'm shutting the season down. Let me get completely healthy for next season. And it's just been a disastrous year. We're not really playing for anything, maybe a final playoff spot. Let me just shut it down. 95 guys would have taken that approach, or 95% of the guys in the league would have taken that approach. So I do respect him playing this out. But yeah, you're right. He had nothing to do with this. He's been an innocent bystander in it all.
Yeah.
And he's just caught in the crossfire.
Yeah, it is unfortunate for him there, but we'll keep it moving out of the playing games, but I'm going to keep it in the same realm here. So sharing my screen, pulling up the playoffs again. My question for you, Sam Oshtry, is out of these playoff teams, looking at the top seeds, which of course in the East, it is the Cleveland Cavaliers and it is the Boston Celtics, the defending Boston Celtics. There's the 1 and 2 seed. And then in the West, the Oklahoma City Thunder holding things down to this top seed, the Houston Rockets as the 2 seed. I think there's a pretty clear answer on this, but which of these top seeds is most vulnerable to being beat by a playing team?
Yeah, I'm going to say the Rockets. Pretty easily, I'm going to say the Rockets, just because the bottom of the West is so much better than the bottom of the East. And I think it's all about experience to me. We've seen teams that have no experience in the playoffs come up short time and time again. You talk about those Warriors team before the dynasty in those early 2010 years, 2013, 2014, before they broke through. Those teams had to go through playoff scars before they finally broke through. You talk about the Grizzlies teams. The Grizzlies have been the 2 seed multiple times in the West. They've won 1 playoff series as the 2 seed, as a top seed in the West, time and time again. You need the playoff scars. You need the playoff battles. It's just I think people forget during this intermission here where we go from the regular season to the playoffs that it's a completely different game. The defensive coverages are zeroed in on your stars more than they ever are. The whole purpose of playoff matchups is just hunting mismatches and just getting these switches to expose weak defenders and heightening your weaknesses and eliminating your strengths. It's just a completely different game. It just is. And when you have teams that haven't been through it, Ime Udoka is a phenomenal coach, and he has been through because he led the Celtics to the finals. But Jalen Green and Amen Thompson and Jabari Smith Jr. and Alperen Sengun and all these guys have never played in a single playoff game in their careers. When you're playing a team, if assuming it is the Warriors, and that's the only reason the way I would take the Rockets to lose if it is against the Warriors, those guys have been through battle after battle after battle for the last decade. All types of losses, a ton of rings, all types of championships, all of it. That's as experienced as a group as you can get. And it will be an interesting matchup because as we saw a couple games ago, when Steph Curry scored 3 points in 33 minutes, that was the Rockets' physicality just completely destroying him mentally and physically. And what they were doing was they were top blocking him a lot, even on his cuts where he relocates a lot. They were checking him. They were being ultra physical with him. And it reminded me of the quarterfinal play-in tournament game. All the way back in December, if you remember that. It was a really controversial game. It was the quarterfinals between the Rockets and the Warriors. And the Warriors lost on a pretty bad call, but it was a really low-scoring game. And the Rockets were just so physical with the Warriors. It was before Jimmy was even there. But they were so physical with the Warriors that it really impacted Steph. And when Steph's not going, it hurts your whole team. The physicality of the Rockets would worry me a little bit against a Warriors team that goes small. Because, again, the Rockets, they've been playing a ton with their 2 bigs, with Alperen Sengun and Steven Adams in the lineup. And that's why they're number 1 in the entire NBA in rebounding percentage. So they've been going big and hammering that. And that's going to be quite the contrast from a team like the Warriors, who plays really small with Draymond at the 5. So the Rockets have basketball advantages that exist, especially with their rebounding, defense, and physicality. But I'm not taking an inexperienced group to beat that experience of a group who have been through the scars, been through the battles. The Rockets' time will come. It's just not this year.
Yeah, no, I'm in full agreement with all of that. And honestly, pretty much regardless of how these playoffs, I guess not full out, depending on how exactly it goes down, but this season in its whole should be viewed as a win by the Rockets. That this was a huge step for the franchise, that you're moving in the right direction. I get this is not all of it. This is a very simplified way of looking at it. But my pushback for any optimism with the Rockets is when you look around the Western Conference, name me a single series that you're going to have the best player on the floor on. And I don't think it exists. And that's
None.
tough to do. That's a huge issue that this organization is going to run into moving forward. Can Jalen Green really be that guy? Can Amin Thompson take that leap? Is Şengün talented enough offensively to make up for some of the shortcomings on the other side of the ball? Those are all questions that they got to sort through. We'll see what happens. If it's the Warriors, I do think they win that series, and I think they're probably favored in that series. But they're going to be a fight, man. Like the Rockets won't roll over, and I do give them credit for that. So we do see that. Go ahead. If you
I was going to say, and it's not only that they don't have the best player. Like you could match up best player versus best player, and someone will have advantage. But you know who the ball is going to late, time and time again. Who is the ball going to late with the Rockets? I mean, we've seen it's been Jalen Green a bunch, but he is one of the more inefficient players over the last over his entire career. Alperen Şengün is a really good hub, but he's not Jokic or Embiid when he operates from that high post who can get you a bucket every single time. Fred VanVleet has been through some playoff wars. He's really the most experienced playoff player there, him and Dylan Brooks. But those aren't guys you're going to late in the game. They don't have a single closer. Amen Thompson everyone loves him, but he still can't shoot the ball just yet. So you still don't have a single closer. Who is the ball going to when you need a bucket in the final couple minutes of a game? They don't have anybody. It's not just not the best player in the series. They don't have a single closer that anybody should trust.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right there. And like with all this being said, I still kind of think the Rockets are on the exact right path here, that it's best to like get burnt by this in the playoffs and go through, build up those same scars we're talking about. So even if they do flame out in the first round, which we're kind of predicting to happen if it is the Warriors here, it shouldn't be this like this is disastrous from a Houston perspective. They still took a lot of steps this year, so don't want to go too hard on them. Now, to go down
let me ask you though, if they do flame out in the first round, or they make a run to somehow they make a run to the conference finals, let's say, which scenario would you be more likely to want to get a guy and go chase a star like Kevin Durant? Because I think I don't know if Kevin Durant's necessarily the answer. Giannis could become available this not free agency, but this offseason via trade. And I would want Giannis way more than I would want KD at this point. But what scenario would you be more likely to go out and get a star? Because I think the time has come for that.
Yeah, I think pretty much regardless of what happens, that's where their head should be at. And I mean, this team's talented, man. And I guess like what I've really pointed to them is they feel very in need of that consolidation trade where you're sending 3 young talents for 1 star. Like they've got like Reed Shepherd, who was drafted. Like I think there's teams that if Reed Shepherd was drafted by, he would be rookie of the year this season, and he barely played any minutes for that team. And that's like more of a testament to how much talent they had. Guys like Tari Eason, who would be like clear-cut high-minute guy on plenty of other rosters. And he's
Cam Whitmore,
another great example. Like they have a ton of guys who they have a hard time carving out. So I think kind of regardless of how this season ends, they have to find a way to make a consolidation trade where you're trading a bunch of young guys for like a top-end talent, but only so many of those top-end talents exist. So I guess to me, it doesn't kind of matter the context of how this playoff exit happens. That's got to be the conclusion. That's got to be where their head's at. But I will praise once again, it's good that they just saw out the process. They did not rush it. More teams mess it up, blowing the load too early and going all in before guys are ready. And the Rockets have not made that mistake. So credit to them. Any other final thoughts on this before we move on?
No, I think that the easier answer is the Warriors. So
yeah,
I mean, assuming they win, that'll be a popular upset. I think the Warriors, there's a chance it'll be a very tight series in terms of the odds board. There's a chance the Warriors are even favored coming out of that.
I kind of think they will be, and will be interesting to see where those odds do settle there. But to move on to the series that we do know are set, let's start right off with Mark Henry Jr.'s Lakers here. The Lakers are minus 200 favorites over the Minnesota Timberwolves. Both teams, it's been sort of a strange year for. Obviously, the Timberwolves had great success in the playoffs last year, then elected to pull the plug on the Karl Anthony Towns experience there, sending him to New York, fully handing the keys to Anthony Edwards. He dealt with both the good and the bad with it. Overall, I would call it a very successful season for Anthony Edwards, but there certainly were some growing pains. And then this Lakers team, I mean, Luka Doncic certainly changes the story quite a bit here. They've found a way to get on the same page and click a lot faster than I sort of expected here. There's still some flaws. They have not had a chance to fully build out the roster around these guys. But where are you at on this Lakers team and this series against the Timberwolves?
Yeah, this is an interesting series, and I think a lot of people are kind of penciling in the Lakers, and I don't think it's going to be that easy for them.
Hmm.
But to me, this series starts and ends with Rudy Gobert, and you know
Think
that
we can
Luka.
end it right there then.
And that's where I'm going because you know Luka loved the fact that he was going to be playing Rudy Gobert in that first round, and Rudy Gobert probably wasn't happy about it. He probably still has nightmares from that shot where Luka just got him on an island. And to me, Rudy Gobert has become unplayable in this series
Yeah.
because what you've seen from Luka over the last month or so is he's been so good attacking switches. And not just obviously, we know what he is when he step backs, when he gets a slow footed big on him, but he's been really good at getting by a lot of these bigs too, where his explosiveness coming off that injury earlier this year is really back to Luka's levels and his deceleration and everything that makes him great as a driver, as a passer. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Wolves kind of play those pick and roll coverages because you can't straight switch and put Rudy Gobert on an island or against a guy like that. But again, the Lakers play small. And what they do is they put Rui at the 5 and Dorian Finney-Smith at the 4. And obviously those other 3 guys, Austin Reeves, LeBron, and Luka, round out the lineup. And when you play that small, all guys that can shoot the ball, like Rui Hachimura is a really good 3-point shooter, especially when he's clicking and he's a willing 3-point shooter. This Lakers offense is impossible to stop. So you're going to have to stretch Rudy Gobert out to the perimeter. And at that point, there's really no need for him to play. Like he shouldn't be on the floor because he's a liability offensively. And if you're forcing him out to the perimeter and he's not even at the rim, there's no need for him to be on the floor. So I think the Lakers are going to make him unplayable in this series. And we've seen that before from him in the playoffs, not just in the NBA, by the way. We've seen that in the Olympics when he plays for France and he becomes unplayable because he's a 0 offensively. And if teams are going to go small and have 5 shooters on the floor, you can't play it. So to me, he's going to be unplayable in this series. Look, I think the Lakers are the more talented group, and it really comes down to that. They have 2 of the best passers and 2 of the best closers in NBA history, as far as I'm concerned, with LeBron and Luka. And then they have Austin Reeves, who has been incredibly clutch this year, too. Anthony Edwards leads the entire NBA in clutch points, but a lot of the Lakers' coverages are going to come down to blitzing and just doubling Anthony Edwards and force the ball out of his hands, put the Lakers in rotation, and then force the Wolves shooters to make shots. Like Dante DiVincenzo is a phenomenal 3-point shooter, shooting almost 40% from the 3 this year after a really rough start. Naz Reid can make 3s. Besides those 2, like, please, Julius Randle, shoot all the 3s you want. If you're the Lakers, that's what you're thinking. There's a lot, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, a lot of guys that you just want to shoot 3s, and it's going to come down to whether they can hit shots or not. And I just trust the Lakers supporting cast and the Lakers going small more than I would the Wolves. I think it's a competitive series. I just think the Lakers probably win in 5 or 6.
Yeah, I think it's Lakers in 6 is my pick. And it's interesting. Like, you're absolutely right about all the skepticism of Gobert. Like, he's a guy that he's so elite in the skills that he's good at, but so limited in what his skill set is. He's a very bizarre basketball player with all of that there. But I kind of think Julius Randle is the bigger story from a Timberwolves perspective for what are your chances here. I think the Lakers are going to say, Julius, go play some Julius Randle basketball, and we'll see what happens here. I think all focus will be on limiting Anthony Edwards. Not that that's easy there. And to your point about like playing small, yes, it's true. The Lakers, that's their priority. That's the way they want to play. But it's not this true small ball. Like when you have LeBron James and Luka Doncic out there, those are guys that can gobble up rebounds, that are real deal, 6'8", however, tall and wide those guys are. We know what units they are on the basketball court. So it does kind of change the perspective a little bit for me there. But the bottom line is this Lakers team still has flaws. They have not been able to build out the roster the way I think will fully optimize these guys. But the only real matchup that I was dreading from their perspective was the Denver Nuggets. I think if there was a Nikola Jokic versus this Lakers team, there would be some real issues. They're on the exact opposite side of the bracket here. So I love how that this setup has made for this Lakers. I do like Mark Henry Jr. taking a stab on them to win the title. I'm not fully there, but I don't think that they end up having too much trouble in this series. It's Lakers in 6, and I do think they win the next series too.
I think they had the perfect path to the conference finals, and then from there you never know. So I do like the bet by Mark because this team is the best path they could have possibly envisioned. The Wolves in the first round, and then either probably the Rockets, inexperienced group, or the Warriors, who they match up pretty nicely against as another small ball group in the second round. So it's the best possible path for the Warriors. To your Julius Randle point, he's been playing really well, and I've been pretty impressed. Like he's back to his bully ball ways.
He gets a worse rep than he deserves. I'll give him that for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And it's always the thing I've said about him is he's really talented and he's a really good player. He's just never really found the right situation because there's not a lot of right situations for him in the NBA because he's such an isolation heavy player and he's a ball stopper and he's good at that, but he's not like great at that. And he's not a floor spacer because he's like a fine shooter, but not some great shooter. There's really like he's a really good player. It's just like he's kind of outdated in a way where it's like maybe 15 years ago he would have been an all NBA guy consistently. But he's been playing really well to his credit, and I do think he's going to be one of the bigger X factors this series. Really, I'm not convinced about the supporting cast Anthony Edwards is going to have around him when your whole priority is going to be doubling him, blitzing him, trying to take the ball out of his hands. And he's pretty good player out of the blitz when we've seen those pick and roll coverages, but he's not like a Luka Doncic out of the blitz. So we'll see how he reacts to that coverage, and I'm sure JJ will implement it because we've heard JJ talk about how he likes blitzing guys and getting the ball out of his hands before. I'm just not sure. I don't trust that supporting cast around them. I don't trust the shooting on that Wolves team other than Anthony Edwards. I think the Lakers win, and now I'm thinking about it as you talk me into it, I'm going to say Lakers in 5 too.
I like it. Let's keep it in the West for this next one here. The matchup that I kind of alluded to, the Los Angeles Clippers and the Denver Nuggets. So the Denver Nuggets, another team to shockingly fire their head coach right before Michael Malone, now out looking for a job on the streets here. But this Nuggets team continues on here. Two teams like the Clippers, I want to give their flowers a little bit more than I think they kind of have gotten. This team battled all season. They embraced the defensive-minded, identity as a team in the way that we've never really seen. James Harden, even at this age, even past his Sixers era, is still being like the complete hub and engine of an offense in a way that I think a lot of people doubted. And Kawhi Leonard is playing some of the best basketball and looking his physically best that I feel I've seen from him in years at this point. So how do you see this series going, and what's your level of optimism for whichever one of these teams you want to take?
So the second the line came out, I was Clippers, and now everyone seems to be on the Clippers, and a lot of people have bet it down because that number's dropped significantly. The Clippers are still slight underdogs, but they still are underdogs, which is surprising to me.
On DraftKings right now,
plus 110 is now. Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that number started like plus 160 or something. It's been bet all the way down to that. It varies based on the book, but on DraftKings, plus 110 now. That's interesting that they're still underdogs because this is as much of a pick'em series as you could find, and I think it goes 7. It's the one I'd feel most confident going 7. The Clippers, like I'm a complete fool for this. Like I'm just a complete fool, and like anyone who's going to pick the Clippers to win the series or go on a run is just, for lack of a better term, like an idiot. Like, and I'm going to be an idiot because the Clippers and Kawhi Leonard have been the best team and the best player in basketball over the last month to month and a half. And I don't really care because every time you pick the Clippers, they disappoint you. And it all hinges on Kawhi Leonard because he is not like, do you know the last time Kawhi Leonard has finished a playoffs or finished the season?
Was it 18-19?
18-19 was the last time, not including the bubble. The bubble was the last time.
Okay.
So the bubble, which is crazy, excluding the bubble, because obviously weird circumstance. The last time he finished a season was he won the NBA championship and finals MVP with the Raptors. Because the year after the bubble, he had the against the Jazz, he got hurt. And that was when the whole injury, and he was out for the whole next season. Then in 2020, that was 21. And then 2022, he's out the whole season. 23, he plays 2 games. Then he's out for the season and in the first round. And then last year, he plays 2 games and he's out for the season again. So he hasn't finished the playoffs in like over 5 years, really, excluding the bubble. So how could I possibly trust a guy like that who's just never healthy ever? But he looks as healthy as he's ever been entering the playoffs. And it's probably helped that he sat a lot of this season, and really he sat more than he even should have. And he only played 37 regular season games just to get him healthy. And that's why I'm so high on this Clippers team, is because they're playing the best basketball that anyone in the NBA has played. Number 1 in net rating over the last 15 games. Number 1 in offense over the last 15 games. Number 3 in defense over the last 15 games. Kawhi Leonard is performing an all NBA level. So I'm not concerned about this Clippers team at all in terms of the injury factors, because Kawhi actually looks healthy. Like, I feel like a fool for actually picking them, but I think this Clippers team could win win the whole West.
Wow, look at that. Look at that, Sam. I do think the Clippers win the series. I thought this was going to be one we were going head to head on Nikola
You thought it
Jokic,
was going
he's
to take
still
the
got
Nuggets?
I mean, Nikola Jokic, like, still doing very special stuff, and I have committed to. I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander should win MVP, but this is a special season by Jokic that I don't think should go underrated. This is the best basketball that he's played of his career, and this is a 3-time MVP we're talking about. Beyond Jokic, don't got a lot of optimism for this Nuggets team, and that's sort of, I think, the root of this entire implosion going on in Denver. But the last question I wanted to bounce out off you in regards to this series, I kind of think Ivica Zubac, who we haven't even mentioned yet, is having a career year, looking like one of the best centers in the league. I think he's the best defensive matchup that Nikola Jokic has ever had in the playoffs. Do you think that's fair or foul take?
Fair, except the Minnesota series last year when they put Karl-Anthony Towns at the 4. They put Karl-Anthony Towns guarding Jokic and then had Rudy Gobert acting as a floater. Has really helped a roamer. Yeah, that was a really tough matchup for Jokic just because it was essentially they were doubling him, and the taller guy and the bigger guy was floating. But I'm with you that Zubac is in contention for Defensive Player of the Year, and he's a phenomenal defender, one of the more, maybe like the 3rd best center in the league this year when you consider the fact that Embiid wasn't really in the league this year, and some other guys Wemby wasn't really in the league he was for half the year, sure. But like guys who started and finished the entire year, Zubac was a top 3 center all season. He's been phenomenal, especially defensively. So yeah, I think it's a tough matchup for Jokic. Jokic is that good. He's going to get he's going to create shots for others. But that's what I think the Nuggets strategy is going to be. It's really going to be guarding Jokic straight up, letting him get his, but limiting other guys like Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon. And the series is going to come down to the others, as it always has with the Nuggets.
Yeah.
We know Jamal Murray really struggled in the playoffs last year. Michael Porter Jr. was really bad in that Wolves series last year. Are those guys going to make enough shots for the Nuggets to beat the Clippers? That I'm not convinced about. And I just think this Clippers team, where it's a lot of times the playoffs simply come down to who is the best player in the series. Jokic is the best player in this series, and he's the best player in every series he'll ever play for probably a long time. But right now, the way Kawhi Leonard is playing, that gap is not that huge.
Yeah.
Like Kawhi Leonard is playing he's been one of the best 5 players in the league over the last month and a half. He looks healthy. His explosion is back. He's getting to any spot he wants on the floor. He's getting to the free throw line at a higher rate. This is the Kawhi Leonard that carried the Raptors to a championship. And maybe I'm getting fooled by only a month and a half sample size, but that's big enough to me where Kawhi Leonard can win you a series and will you to a series win. And I could see him doing this against the Nuggets.
Absolutely. And by the way, he played 47 minutes yesterday. He's back. It's off. And for Kawhi specifically, like, what a fascinating guy that if you were to talk to somebody who had never watched NBA basketball, like explaining the story arc of him, I think he's probably like in the upper echelon of most unique, just overall stories with everything that's gone on with this guy. But yeah, I kind of will be rooting for this Clippers team. And I did not expect that to be the case there. So,
well, look, Sean, we also could be here in like 2 Mondays from now. And I'll be like, all right, Kawhi questionable for next game.
James Harden
after that game,
12. Yeah,
out for the season, shutting him down, and I'll be like, yeah, I'm an idiot for getting fooled by the Kawhi health thing. I do want to ask you about, because we haven't mentioned this guy. Are you concerned at all about James Harden in the playoffs?
I mean, I think we know the deal with James Harden at this point. There will be a clunker game that you just straight up can't win with him on the floor in the series, that they'll drop one essentially because of James Harden. But I think that this specific Clippers team is sort of built to contain his highs and lows in a way that we haven't seen probably ever on a James Harden team. I guess maybe the Brooklyn team, if you want to kind of throw them in that category here. But like having a guy like Kawhi that you can play off. And by the way, when you look at his assist numbers, he averages like 3 more assists per game with Kawhi on the floor with him not. Like you can kind of see it where Harden like metamorphosizes into this score first guy to where he's back into kind of a true floor general there. So he has his flaws. He's not going to be perfect, and there will be some cold stretches. But I give James a lot of credit for this season, man. He's absolutely been an all-NBA guy, in my opinion. I think he's competed defensively more than he has a lot of seasons in his career. And, I mean, the team obviously rocks with him. That like they're built around James Harden still. So he's not perfect. He'll have his downs, but I think that they can survive the James Harden experience.
I'm 100% with you, because this team doesn't rely on James Harden the way the other playoff teams has. And we know like he is he's a playoff choker. Like he just is. That's the reality of James Harden. Time and time again, he's come up short in the playoffs in big moments. But that was in Houston when he was the guy, the entire offense and everything was around him. And then also in Philadelphia, where he was second fiddle to it, Joel Embiid. But Embiid also wasn't a proven playoff guy at all by any stretch. Kawhi Leonard, when healthy, is when healthy is a proven playoff guy. So like he can play second fiddle. And we should also mention Norman Powell's playing an all-star level. Like those four guys on the floor, that lineup of Norman Powell, Zubac, Kawhi Leonard, and James Harden. And you can throw like a Chris Dunn in there or a Derrick Jones Jr., whichever fifth guy.
Yeah.
Those guys, those lineups have been one of the best in the league in terms of their net rating over the last month and a half to 2 months. So those lineups have been unbeatable. And hopefully Ben Simmons doesn't make the rotation because he shouldn't, maybe like 8 minutes a night max. But this Clippers team is built to make a playoff run.
Yeah. So we will see if it happens here. They do have a lot of those guys that I have kind of my asterisks and red flags next to, but somehow it does all work here. So shout out to this Clippers team. Let's get it over the Eastern Conference here. So 2 more matchups to dive into. We'll start off with the one before I get all fired up. The Milwaukee Bucks and the Indiana Pacers here. The exact odds on DraftKings Sportsbook, the Pacers are minus 200 favorites. The Bucks plus 160 there. There does seem to be some optimism that Damian Lillard can return or potentially take the floor, but we will see if that actually happens here. Where's your head at on this series?
This is the toughest one for me, and this has kind of become a rivalry in the NBA.
Yeah.
In a weird way, between the Bucks and the Pacers. This Pacers team dominated the Bucks last year in the regular season. Yeah, 4-0 in the regular season, right? And then they went into the playoff series, but it wasn't a real playoff series because Giannis and Dame were both in and out of the lineup, barely played. And Chris Middleton had some great games, and the Bucks, I think they won 1 or 2 games. I just had it up.
Swept. But I'm pretty sure they swept them.
The Pacers swept them?
I'll double check, but yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, maybe you're right, but I feel like I remember it being more competitive. I remember like Chris Middleton going crazy one game.
You're right, 4-2.
4-2. They did sweep them, I think, in the regular season. The Pacers dominated them in the regular season. So 4-2 in a series that Giannis and Dame were barely even in. But this Pacers team is pretty different, honestly, because they're way better defensively. They've been a top 10 defense in the league over the last 2 months. So this Pacers team is better defensively. A part of me, it's a really hard matchup to handicap because we have no idea what's going to happen with Dame. With Dame, I'm taking this Bucks team because this Bucks team has been playing pretty well recently. I'm taking the Bucks with Dame, but we're dealing with a blood clot. We're not dealing with like a torn ankle or a rolled ankle or something like that or banged up knee. It's a blood clot. Like that's a very serious thing. You can't even really travel on a plane with that. You don't come back early from a blood clot. But all these signals from the Bucks are that he's progressing better and he could be able to come back for the playoffs. If Dame comes back at any point in this series, like before game 4, I'm taking the Bucks. I could see this series going 7 anyway. This to me, and people are really high on the Pacers team this year. And I think they've done some really good things over the last couple months. Tyrese Halliburton played himself into an all-NBA team after really struggling at the start of the season. I still think Pascal Siakam's the best player on the team. This to me comes down to Giannis, who since Dame's gone out has played a lot of point guard, which really has unlocked this offense because with him just bringing the ball up the floor, you have to have so much help when you're trying to stop being in the gaps on Giannis's drives. And he's just obviously a great passer. He's so big and athletic. He can get to the rim in 2 steps. He's the best player in the series by a mile. This is best player. Take the best player in the series. Take that team to win. And as underdogs, I think the Bucks win this series in 7.
Wow. I like it there. And I also have not fully figured out what to do with this series. I hate that it is played out this way because I was really starting to believe in how this Bucks team was playing before Lillard was shut down there. And it sucks that even like under the best case scenario here, you're just kind of shoving them back in and hoping that you guys can pick up where you left off here. Giannis has absolutely leveled up his game as a passer this season. I've been really impressed with not just like the raw assist numbers, but he's doing some more advanced stuff than I've ever seen from him as far as generating looks for others. And that does matter. He's also basically entirely cut out 3-point shots from his shot diet there, which I think he deserves credit for. Like we've kind of forced him into the box of like everyone has to shoot threes these days. He just takes the shots that he's good at, and it's been really effective for this Bucks team. Now, with all that being said, you look at this Pacers team, I'm really encouraged by they've basically been the opposite of last year. They were red hot at the start of last season and really faded down the stretch with that pretty linearly connected to the level of play from Tyrese Halliburton. This year, it's been the opposite. They started cold. Halliburton had a really tough stretch to start the year, and both him and the team have turned things around this second half of the season. So I don't hate any direction with what you want with that overall take. I do lean towards the Pacers winning this series, but Dame is that ultimate question mark there. If it was a fully healthy Damian Lillard, I think I would be on the Bucks. But based on the uncertainty, I think I'm rocking with the Pacers to win this series. Would not be willing to pay the minus 200 for that series price, though.
Giannis has become, in a weird way, underrated.
I would agree.
He's having the best season of his career, probably, and he's had to do everything, especially over the last 2 months for this team, to really drag them even to get a top 5 seed in the East. He's shooting his worst percentage from three in the last decade, which is interesting, as you said, because he's really just he's not taking threes. He doesn't have to. He can get to the rim at will. He can when he's capable of hitting a 12 to 15-foot jumper when he has to. But he doesn't need to shoot threes, and he's shooting horribly from them when he does, 22% right now or this season. I'm just this is best. Like I said, this is best player. Take the best player in the series who's playing at the best. He's playing at the best production of his entire career right now. So just take that guy and answer the questions later. I really like the Bucks. I'm talking myself into it. I'm starting to really like the Bucks.
Hey, I don't hate it there. And we'll see how that we will shift over to the last matchup of this opening round, which I believe is the most
it took us an hour to get here. It's the only one that we even need to talk about.
True. The most disrespectful line in the opening round is the New York Knicks being minus 400 favorites over the Detroit Pistons. Plus 310 to win the series is the Pistons there. And the same exact question, I'll start out with Sam Oshtry. Who is the best player on this series?
It's the dumbest question. You know the best player in the series. Everybody knows the best player in the series. Yeah. It's Jalen Brunson. Cade Cunningham has never stepped foot on a playoff floor in his life. We're talking about Jalen Brunson, who averaged 35 points a game against the Sixers last year, when he shot 16% from three in those opening 2 games against the Sixers last year. And he was horrible in those first 2 games. And then he comes back with like a 38 ball and 3 straight 40 balls, 40-plus balls. He's one of the best playoff performers in the entire NBA. There aren't 6 or 7 guys in the entire league I would trust in the playoffs more than Jalen Brunson. He's by far the best player in the series. It's not even a question. I don't care what the best season, who's the best player. It's Jalen Brunson because he's been there. He's a phenomenal playoff performer. He's a great clutch performer. Second in the league in clutch points behind Anthony Edwards this season. It's not even a question who's the best player. He's also become a much better passer this year and getting Karl-Anthony Towns into the offense. I don't care about the raw numbers. Jalen Brunson is the best player in the series, and he's one of the best players in the league still. Don't forget about who that guy is and when the lights shine brightest.
I will give you the point about Cade Cunningham has to take the crown here, that Jalen Brunson has done this on the biggest stage, all those. If I just want to look at these guys as 2 basketball players, Cade Cunningham is better at the sport. He's a better rebounder than Jalen Brunson. He's a better passer than Jalen Brunson. He's a better defender than Jalen Brunson. There is no doubt.
Who cares if your point guard is a better rebounder?
I mean, fair, but at the same time, I got to, these are all facts that I got to bring to the table here. The defense is the bigger story with me, with Cade and with Jalen specifically. And honestly, with all that I'm talking about with Cade Cunningham versus Jalen Brunson, who this series comes down to me is Karl-Anthony Towns. Karl-Anthony Towns is an incredibly talented basketball player, but I kind of think he's also a very flawed basketball player. Defensively, he is a nightmare. And I think for the Knicks fans that are ready to chase me with a pitchfork for this truth coming your way, get ready to learn Cade Cunningham, because it is going to be a nightmare every time that Karl-Anthony Towns is tasked with guarding that man in the pick and roll. That is what I expect to happen a ton. I don't subscribe to this theory of you can just shift Cat to the 4 with Mitchell Robinson as the 5 and everything is fixed. That means he has to guard in space more, which I frankly think he's even weaker than he is as a rim deterrent, which, by the way, he's also very poor at there. Cat is excellent offensively. This Knicks team has reached a level offensively that I didn't think was possible, but they've also been worse defensively than I thought could be the case. I thought the floor was higher than what we've seen from them defensively. And this Pistons team, they're not afraid, man. There's going to be fights. There's going to be ejections. There's going to be technicals. Isaiah Stewart is getting kicked out of at least 2 of these games here, but I don't think they're going to roll over. It does feel a bit premature for the Pistons to go out there and outright win the series. But I do think that this series goes 7. My favorite bet regarding it will be over 5.5 games. There's almost no doubt in my mind that this series goes at least 6. And what I want the takeaway to be from this overall series is that Cade Cunningham has arrived, that this guy is now on the stage that we're talking about as a franchise cornerstone, a clear-cut all-NBA guy, which he has been for the entirety of the season. I want him to go eye to eye with Jalen Brunson, and I think he will.
Let me tell you how this series is going to play out. They're going to blitz Cade Cunningham into oblivion. All of his ball screens are going to be blitz, blitz, blitz. I don't care who they put in the actions. Obviously, the Knicks are going to try to do some pre-switching where they don't have to put Karl-Anthony Towns in the actions, and they can get Jalen Brunson, or excuse me, a Josh Hart or an OG or a Mikal Bridges on those pick and roll coverages. They're going to be blitzing Cade Cunningham into oblivion, make him make plays out of the blitz. And then you know what's going to happen? You're going to have to rely on the Pistons' pretty inconsistent three-point shooting to win this series. You've got Malik Beasley, phenomenal shooter. Don't get me wrong. That's not the guy you want the ball going to if you're the Knicks when that ball starts to get swung. You know who you do want the ball to go to? Tobias Harris. You know more. Yeah. You know that more than anyone. Please. The Knicks want Tobias Harris to shoot as many threes as possible. He's shooting like something like around 35% from three this year. In the playoffs, I don't really trust that. Ausar Thompson, who was a phenomenal athlete and he's going to be a great player in this league for a long time. He is a horrible three-point shooter. Let him shoot threes. Let guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. can make threes, but again, inconsistent. Guys like Ron Holland, not a good three-point shooter. They're going to blitz Cade Cunningham. And again, guys like Jalen Duran and some of these other guys who are going to get the ball in the short roll off the blitz, they're not great short roll playmakers the way we see some of these other guys in the league are, like an Isaiah Hartenstein or Alperen Sengun or some of these other guys. He's not like that. Blitzing Cade Cunningham is going to create a lot of problems for him because he's been blitzed throughout certain regular season games, but not throughout a 2-week series or a series that I only have going 5 games, but consistently on a night-to-night basis. Blitzing Cade Cunningham is going to be the answer. And I'm not going to say struggle in this series. He's going to get his still, no doubt. He's a phenomenal player. And to your point, he has arrived. He is a franchise cornerstone. You will be able to win and be a top seed in the East for years to come with a guy like Cade. This series is going to be difficult for him because you're going to start OG on him. Mikal Bridges, who's been a little underwhelming as an on-ball defender this year, but he's going to get reps on him. You're obviously going to try to target Jalen Brunson to get switches where Jalen Brunson is going to have to guard Cade Cunningham, kind of like the Sixers did a lot with Tyrese Maxey to get Brunson on him last year. Again, they're going to blitz Cade Cunningham all the time, get the ball out of his hands. The Knicks are just the better team. Like there's not much more to it than me. They have the best player in the series. They have the way better and more talented starting 5. And yeah, there are concerns about Karl-Anthony Towns defensively for sure. But in this series, that's not really going to be an issue.
Is there any world in your mind that the Knicks lose this series?
No, none.
All right. Well, how about
what? Go ahead. I was going to say there is one world. Injuries, of course.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah. That's the thing about this Knicks team is everyone likes to talk about how they were 0-8 against the Cavs and the Celtics. Well, 4 of those games.
0-10 if you want to throw in the Thunder, by the way.
Sure, yeah. But the Thunder are just an anomaly this season. They're just that good. And they're not getting to the finals anyway, so they're really not even relevant. The Knicks aren't getting there. I mean.
Gotcha.
But what I'll say about that is they're 0-8 against the Cavs and Celtics this year. 4 of those games, so half of those games, they didn't have one of their starters. And then the other 2 of the 4 games where they were at full strength was in October. It was 2 of the first 3 games of the season. So I don't really care about October basketball when you're trying to incorporate 2 new starters into your lineup. And then really only comes down to 2 games. And one of those games, the Knicks went to overtime against the Celtics and should have won in regulation. And that was last week. So I'm not really concerned about that 0-8 mark. But what that does show is how vulnerable they are when one starter goes down. One starter goes down, it's a completely different Knicks team. So, yeah, of course, that starting lineup has played 200-plus more minutes than any other 5-man lineup in the entire NBA this season. So they have a lot of miles on them. But they also have a week off now, which is going to help. And Jalen Brunson's been a little banged up. He's only played 4 games since he came back. But, again, having a week off is going to help. Injuries are a concern. Other than that, if that starting 5 is on the floor together and they're going to be playing 30-plus or 35-plus, some of them 40-plus minutes a night, I don't see any way possible the Knicks don't win in really 6 games maximum, but I think it's going to be in 5.
You know, the Pistons beat the Cavaliers this year.
Congratulations. Should they hang a banner?
Yeah, well, you're giving one for an overtime loss to the Boston Celtics. So, I mean, what are we doing here?
I'm just saying their playoff prospects, it's a little flawed, that 0-8 record. That's my only point. Is that
0-8 is 0-8. You lost 8 times against the top teams. You
okay, but there's context surrounding that.
Team. Sort of, but at the same time, if you're that good, you find a way. That's what basketball is, man. You think the Celtics were fully healthy in all those games? You think the Cavaliers had their 100% best punch in every single one of those? I don't have it in front of me, but I find that hard to believe if that was the case.
But that's the point. It's that those teams can rely on depth. The Knicks can't, and that's the one
That's
thing.
a problem. That's like a point against it. When OG Anunoby's hamstring inevitably pops off the bone in game 2 of this series, then what? Then what happens? And you have to look at Tom Thibodeau for playing him 1,000,000 minutes this entire season. Thibs deserves criticism here. Do you think if they lose this series, Thibs is fired?
No chance.
No chance, really. I've had some Knicks people that have been pitching that to me, which I was kind of surprised by as well. Let me ask it in a better way here. What is a successful playoffs for this Knicks team?
Let me say something about Thibs real quick. So, well, I'll answer your question first, actually. Successful playoff run, of course, if you make the conference finals and beat the Celtics in the second round, that's super successful. That would be incredible. I don't think that's happening. I'm not going to go that far with this Knicks team. I do think it's possible. I think they're a little undervalued. I don't think that's going to happen. A successful playoff run will be beating the Pistons and then going at least 6 games against the Celtics. What would you say?
I mean, I think that's realistic. I think that has to be like the bar. I don't think you should be thrilled that that's the outcome. Like, I guess my whole point about this Knicks team, the way that I'm looking at it, I think there's a pretty significant gap between the Celtics and them. Now, granted, not a lot of teams are in that tier. I frankly think it's a tier of 3 this season. The West is kind of a different story here, but I would put like the true top dogs of the season have been the Cavaliers, the Celtics, and the Thunder. I don't think the Knicks are like close to cracking that. And I think that should be a more humbling reality than anything that these results indicate.
But here's the thing about that point. This Knicks team isn't set up for 1 year. When they made that huge Bridges trade and gave up all those picks, when they got Karl-Anthony Towns, this Knicks team, I know the Bridges extension, it could get a little complicated this offseason, but this Knicks team is set up for years to come. So why does it have to, my question to you would be, why does it have to happen in year 1? Why does it all have to come together in year 1?
See, we're looking at the same exact situation and viewing it completely differently. I view this as a bad thing. You've cashed in all your chips for a not good enough team. Where does the leap happen? Does Jalen Brunson get better? Can Mikal Bridges get better? Does OG Anunoby take another leap? Does Karl-Anthony Towns magically figure out how to defend? I don't think any of these things happen. Like, this is who the team is here.
There's 3 things to me that could happen in terms of a leap. Number 1 is you get more depth. Of course, you get more depth. You can play your guys less, and that's important.
He has to do it.
I agree, but I do think if he he needs to trust some younger guys like Tyler Kolek, Landry Shamet a little more throughout the year. But if he had a little bit more depth, he's playing those guys. He's playing the starters left a little bit, like Brunson.
But he did this with the Bulls. Like, this is who he is. Like, you know,
no, I mean you're right. But more depth, it'll help to a degree.
Sure.
He also can withstand injuries. Because by the way, OG had one of the more healthy seasons of his career. Like he was pretty healthy for how much he played this year. He was 9th in the NBA in minutes. You know who were first and second?
Yeah. Mikal Bridges and Jalen Brunson, I would assume.
No, Hart. Why did birthday?
Some balloons up there. Look at
that. No, yeah, it was Hart. It was Hart and Mikal Bridges were first and second. But here's what I'll answer your question about. Where does the leap come? Number 1, it comes with pairing Karl-Anthony Towns with a 5, and it's sacrificing a little offensively for more defense. Because I'm with you. Karl-Anthony Towns cannot play the 5 defensively. He gets targeted in the pick and roll. He's not that great guarding in space. He isn't a 5 defensively at all. Offensively, he's lethal because we know what he can shoot from 3. So that's the first thing. I don't know if Mitch is the answer, mostly because of the health concerns. They really don't even play him more than 20 minutes a night. And you're going to need a better 5. Isaiah Hartenstein would have been perfect. But obviously that didn't happen.
He's balling for the Thunder, by the way.
Yeah, he sure is. He's awesome. And then the second part is making Mikal Bridges more featured in the offense, which is a leap that can happen internally. And that's my biggest gripe with Thibs this year, is that you have not seen, it's really a one-dimensional offense, and they are the most efficient pick and roll offense in the entire NBA. So it's not like they're not doing a good job with that 1-5 pick and roll between Brunson and Cat. It's just a little one-dimensional. Like Bridges should not be relegated to the corner as a spot-up guy. Like I want to see him in more actions. Number 1, he's great coming downhill off a high ball screen. He's great off handoffs, some zoom actions. When he gets ahead of steam downhill, getting to the rim or getting to his midi pull-up spots or even 3-point pull-up spots, that's when he's at his best. So him being more feature in the offense is a leap that can happen internally. And it's also just figuring it out. Like you've seen teams throughout their trajectories stay with the same core, and more chemistry you build, guys take leaps, you just figure it out. And those teams that stick together oftentimes are rewarded for their patience. And a couple years down the line, this could be an NBA championship team.
Maybe I'm having to really squint, as Daryl Morey once said, to view this team as a championship contender here. We'll see what overall shakes out from there. I
Let me
do
flip
agree.
let me flip the question to you though about the Pistons series. What could you see going wrong for the Knicks where the Pistons win the series?
I mean, injuries is certainly what I would lead with there. Like, I view it more as a ticking time bomb than like bad luck. It's like if you just push them a little bit, it's gonna happen, man. These guys have wear and tear that like you can't quite replicate here. For the Pistons, exactly here. I mean, Cade's the guy that's got to be the straw that stirs the drink, and you bring up some fair points about the blitzes and everything like that. I think internally there's a chance where they can bully ball this Knicks team. That I think Jalen Duren, I think Isaiah Stewart, the amount of big bodies that they have, and these guys aren't like ridiculously skilled. It is more like brute force and athleticism type thing. But I kind of think if they're gonna play Karl Anthony Towns at the 5, which will at least get in stretches, you can beat this team up on the interior. I kind of think that's the direction the Pistons have a chance, and of course, Cade doing his thing. So it's not going to be perfect. But the Knicks have to. I mean, the Pistons have to like impose themselves defensively and be the bully against this Knicks team, which I do think is possible.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I mean, Isaiah Stewart might make Karl Anthony Towns cry at some point this series.
Seriously.
I could definitely see that. And look, Jalen Duren, they're a really tough physical defensive group and good rebounding team too. Not that the Knicks aren't that, but they're not what they were last year when they were the best rebounding and offensive rebounding team in the league and a top 10 defense. So yeah, they definitely lost some physicality and toughness from last season. It's not the same type of group in that way. I just one team is way better and they're more experienced. And like I'm putting my chips on that table. Like that's why I think the Pistons could get a win just based off of pure toughness and physicality. One win though, that's as far as that's going to get them. And I don't see it going more than that. Beyond the big picture though, just back to that conversation for a second before we wrap up. Big picture, the Knicks just won back-to-back 50-win seasons for the first time since 1994-95. Like, this team is on the right path. Last offseason, they made their big splash with Mikal Bridges and Karl Anthony Towns. Yeah, and it wasn't to win in one season, and it wasn't just to win immediately. Part of it was to get better wing defenders, to build a roster to defend teams like the Celtics, who are wing-dominant, offensively wing-dominant players. But it was also the build for the next few years, and that's what they're doing. And so it's not about this one season for the Knicks. It's from a big picture perspective. They're on the right path. They're not some team in like playoff purgatory just because they're about to lose in the second round for the third straight year. This is a new team. They're on the right path. They have the right personnel. They just have to build around the margins. And look, they're still the 5th best record in the NBA this year. Like they're not some team that completely fell off. They had a better record this year than last year, so they didn't completely fall off. The Knicks will be all right. I know you don't want that to hear that, but the Knicks will be all right.
Yeah, they'll be fine. Like in the grand scheme of things, they're certainly in a significantly better position than they were a couple years ago. There's no doubt about that. So they are moving in the right direction there. But I do think the flowers have been handed the organization a little prematurely. Like they have not done a lot yet. I just will put it this way. So we'll see how that ultimately shakes out. They are minus 400 favorites for a reason in this series here. And by the way, when I was starting to chirp up my anti-Knicks take, my belief in this Pistons team, I had proposed to me by shout out to Matt Chirico, who's a Knicks guy, Knicks content creator out there, trying to get me to agree to a Waffle House punishment where I got to stay for 24 hours every waffle, or I think it was pancake, whatever it was, for every pancake they get if the Knicks win that series. And I'm like, brother, they're minus 400.
Yeah, that's not the best odds.
Yeah, like I get what I like where your head's at here, but like I'm not. If this was a Sixers Knicks series, you can kind of talk me into that. I'm not going to bat for the Pistons that hard.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe that's a good proposal when it's Knicks Celtics. If the Knicks somehow win, then you should have to do that.
That I'd be willing to stake the risk for. But yeah, when we're talking literal minus 400 favorites as this series is, I'm not putting the pancakes on the line for that one. But
speaking of that, can we get an update on the TikTok dances for the people?
Yeah, I do. I've created my game plan a little bit here. Those are going to start roll out. I'm going to do a countdown until the draft lottery. So there's some tough Jared McCain TikToks I have scrolled through, evaluated, watched the tape on, and got to get recreated myself.
How many are you doing? You have to do every single one?
I have people have been pretty light on the request, which I appreciate. I'm not kind of reinforcing there. So I think I'm mostly going to pick mine. I have a
People
couple
pick
that,
it up on the request.
yeah. I mean, people are more than welcome. I'm probably going to do 10 TikToks as a countdown until the draft lottery is my game plan. I might go as many as 2 weeks if the hips really get flowing here.
Nice. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward
Yeah.
to it.
Absolutely. Well, we dove into the entire play-in and opening round. For now, we will find out officially what those seeds are set for the top 2 seeds in each conference once the play-in is complete. But me and Sam are going to be breaking things down from every single angle across the next few weeks in this NBA playoffs. Appreciate each and one of you guys tuning into this here. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button wherever you're listening at, whether it is on the iHeart app, on YouTube for Fox Sports The Gambler, or anywhere else there. So appreciate you guys. Keep it locked, and we'll be back. Talk with you next time.